mic working? Okay. First things first, if you want to find out where my resources are, they're on this website. It's the Google site. I do have a presentation tomorrow as well, so that will be on there. I think this is where I'm going to house my presentations. A lot of them are in my Google Drive currently, but that doesn't help if I share them out. You know, I should have a universal link place for people to find the resources. That's how I'm going to go moving forward. So bit.ly/Tyler Presents. That's simple enough to remember, hopefully. So you can follow along with me there, or you can follow along with me on my presentation. So I'm going to have you follow along. You can do this via your mobile device. You can do this via a tablet, computer, whatever you wish to use. There are a few interactive pieces here that I'm going to have you participate in. And it's just kind of a fun way to use a new tool. This is called Audience Connect. You can use this with Google Slides. I can't remember if this is a beta or not. I signed up for it. Haven't had a chance to use it yet, but I want to use it. It's similar to like a Pear Deck. It's similar to that format where you add some interactivity to your presentation and you can keep your audience engaged. So that's the idea anyway, in your presentation. You can see here though there's a few steps. So I'll go through these. You can't see them in the back. So you need to go to a new browser. You need to actually search Create with Google. If you're on mobile, you'll see the 3 lines. You'll see the menu icon. If you're on a computer, you'll just see at the top it says Join Presentation. Join a presentation. So if you click on that and then you put in this access code, it should prompt to ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm not doing anything with your information. I just had that as a first slide just so we can see who is here. But, hopefully it works. This is my first time using it, so we'll see. Did anybody get it to work? Thumbs up. All right, awesome. I'm not sure if that connected code at the bottom will stay there, but it is pretty crucial, obviously, to have these instructions. So if you're going to be with me, I'll give you another minute or so. If you're not going to join in this way, that's okay. You don't have to. You can just follow along in the presentation. Again, it's called Audience Connect. You really, on my MacBook, I actually had to download the app, put it on my MacBook, and then it adds, it's basically an add-on for Google Slides. And it feels kind of like Pear Deck where you can add in different elements to your slideshow. But it remains to be seen how good it works because this is the first time. So you were prompted by this. If you're on mobile, you see that format. You see the same thing on your computer. And just so you are aware, this is Google Classroom Beyond the Basics. We're going to talk about some things that you can do to take Google Classroom beyond the basics and really get the full benefit of using something like Google Classroom. Because if you're going to put the time and effort to put your students on Google Classroom, you're going to use it in the classroom, you might as well utilize it to its fullest potential and use it to help you in your teaching. A little bit about myself. I'm an instructional tech consultant at Northwest AEA, so in the northwest corner of the state. I'm a former middle school and high school teacher. I'm an online instructor as well. So I work with AEA Learning. That's where I teach a course on this, actually. I also teach for ISEA Academy. Here's my family of 5. We also are owner of about 18 pets or so, chickens, cats, and dogs. So, do live on an acreage, so they have a place to run. That's a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I do teach a class called, it's actually called Google Classroom Beyond the Basics. Not to like selflessly, promote myself, but more so just giving an idea of how I teach the class. Obviously, I teach adults, I don't teach students anymore. So in this class, we focus a lot on how you can create learning experiences, how you can help your students find learning experiences, and basically how you can organize all those learning experiences on Google Classroom. Obviously, there's a variety of users. Some are just using it as a place to make announcements. That's great. Maybe you put your syllabus on there. Maybe you're starting to have conversations on there, discussion forums, if you will. Maybe you're just doing quizzes at the end of a unit or at the end of the week. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that you can use Google Classroom. When I teach that course, though, a lot of it is focusing on going back into your classroom, figuring out ways that you can use the ideas from the class, and then creating an action plan where you are required to put it into action during the course. So my question to all of you is, beyond the basics, how do you use Google Classroom currently beyond the basics? Here's our first real test with audience connect. So you should have been prompted with a question. You can answer that question. Oh, sorry. I think I missed one section. I won't be able to see your response. If you could just submit this for my own sake, and then if anyone wants to share how you're using Google Classroom beyond basics, I'd love to hear. Does anyone want to share what they submitted? Sure, go ahead.
I just post assignments and collect homework.
Okay, posting assignments, collecting homework. Do you give feedback online?
No, I'd rather print them off.
Okay. Fair
I
enough.
teach reading, so I have that feedback.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
I think that's actually that comment bank rubrics, new rubric beta for classroom right now. Works really well. It's Google's pretty much our entire world. It's my LMS, my primary LMS.
Gotcha. Okay. So, as a user that's using it for basically your learning management system, obviously you're probably using it at an advanced level then. If you're basically paperless, if you will, that's definitely an option. It doesn't necessarily have to be your goal, but that is an option for you. I'll also read all your responses once I look at that. Thank you for sharing. The big question is, though, are you staying updated on all the new updates to Google Classroom? So there are ways to do this. Obviously, you won't be able to follow along on this GIF, but this is the blog for Google Classroom, and I do have this linked in the show note, in the slideshow notes. You can go to their blog. You can see some of the updates. Nice thing about that is it tells you not only what they're obviously updating, but it gives you guides for how to implement it in the classroom. So it is teacher-friendly. I reference these guides quite a bit because if you teach a course on it, obviously you should have the most updated information. Also on this What's New, on this blog, this is where I learned about those beta opportunities, so rubrics, originality reports, even some of the grading tools, or the Classroom Sync. That's one that I won't use because I don't have a student information system. But if you come from a district that wants to sync Google Classroom grades to your student information system, I think that's a desirable thing to have. That's definitely in beta as well, but those are where you find that information. And here's where you can find the updates like the classwork page. If you notice that now it is a permanent fixture in your classroom, September 4th, 2019, they did away with the old structure, forced you to go to their new structure. Now you have to have the classwork page before you can turn it on. So today, what we are going to focus on are basically 3 categories. And I know you can go way beyond this. There are lots of ideas out here for the sake of time, but also, just to give you some ideas that are quick wins, quick things that you can do. If you aren't very familiar with all the features of Google Classroom, that'll be a part of this. Also though, if you want to take it advanced, you want to go way beyond what you're currently doing, beyond the basics, you can certainly do that. And so we're going to talk about the aesthetics of Google Classroom. Let's make it a learning space that is dynamic, inviting, welcoming to your students, a place where they won't, I know they have to go there, but maybe they want to go there because they know that they can interact in the classroom, and it's a great experience for them. Also, instructional design kind of works hand in hand with that. We talked about that. Access and accessibility, not accessibility necessarily, your accessibility tools, but just accessibility in terms of how you deliver and organize your content so it's accessible to your learners 24/7, essentially. And then lastly, for the theme of Halloween, of course, some differentiation, but also some spooky and scary good ideas. I'm a dad. It is what it is. But anyway, also part of my dadding here actually created poems here almost, it seems like. It wasn't, and they rhyme, of course, but anyway. So some things we can do with aesthetics. You could change your theme image, perhaps a GIF, or maybe just an image. It is pretty slick, and I'm going to show you in a second. Also, you probably noticed if you're on the slideshow, I skipped a few slides. Those have tutorial videos on them. I won't share you a tutorial video today, but if you want to come back to this and find out, oh, how do I do that again? Because I'm going to show you, but in 30 seconds time, you might not remember all the steps. Also, emojis. Emojis are fun. Emojis are great, I guess. But do they really educate? No, we'll find out. And then also, topics. Google Classroom is good. Google Classroom is great, but without topics, it can frustrate. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in the classroom. First and foremost, you might have your theme here. You maybe have updated your theme and used some of their updates. There are some cool things here. That's great. You can select the class theme and change it. Or you can upload a photo. Here is where you can find images that relate specifically to your class. If you're doing some Iowa history, having some historical images, fair use images that you can put into your classroom that focus on the chapter that you're doing, the topic that you're doing, the unit. Cool, that's really cool that you can do that. Maybe you have student artwork, like in the art classroom, that you want to take a picture of and put it as your header for the class. You feature different art each week, as a gallery type of thing. I know it's a lot of work, but your students might really appreciate that. And maybe you open it up to the class and say, this is your space just as much as my space. Do you have something that you want to create as a header for our class? Because they can basically create anything on Google Drawing, and you can put that into your header. So you can select photos from your computer. Maybe you found a photo. I don't really have very good options here. Maybe you go and find an image. That would be a better way to do it. So do something like a GIF of a dog. It might work. There you go. So I really like this one. I think it'll capture my students' attention when they come in. Big thing I need to be thinking of, though, is the size. So that's not really a good size. It needs to be at least 1,000 by 600 or more. We'll try this. So if you save an image, hopefully it's fair use when you're looking at images. Found this image, drag it in. I can make it interactive, or I can do just a still image. Hopefully this works. So, you go and find an image of, one that is actually big enough. See if this garners results. All right, well, that will work. But, if you find a GIF that you could In the instructions, I have one that actually shows you what will work, but if you find one that's big enough, then you can crop it, and you can have, you can figure out how the image might fit into the frame, and it could be an interactive image if you wish, or like I said, you could have student-created images, or you could, find an image yourself, and then you can change those out. Other things you can do, just talking about the aesthetics here as far as using emojis. So this is the class that I actually teach, and you can see how I'm using emojis to distinguish different parts of the class. Obviously, as an online class, this is more module-based. Yours might look like units. Yours might look like different content areas, depending on what you teach. And you can do all that by just putting the text. I mean, obviously that is something that distinguishes each topic, but you can also add in things like an emoji just to add some flair to it. I use them to differentiate, obviously, the different modules here. You probably noticed that I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. I've learned over time, got to keep things as explicit as possible, especially with an online course where I never see these individuals face-to-face unless I see them at iTech or something like that. But I will never see these individuals face-to-face. So I have to be extremely explicit, just explicit, as far as how I organize my topics so it makes sense, there's a flow that can go from either something that is just material to a learning opportunity to a question and what have you. And obviously that depends on what your instructional design looks like. If you're in a social studies classroom, you have your compelling question that maybe starts the unit, that's your hook, that's where you get students to involve. Maybe it comes with some sort of prior knowledge activity, and then you go from there, and then you build out, here's a supporting question, here's a formative task that goes with it, a supporting question, formative task. Obviously, we all have different ways that we structure our units, but this is how I did it. Big thing is the topics. So adding the topics in, so then you can move the topics around, but also the topics then indicate sections of your class. And also here, what I've done is, I do use Roman numerals just to indicate, this is the first thing, second thing, third thing, etc., that you do for my instructional design. I've seen other ways to do it online. Alice Keeler has a lot of different naming conventions that she shares, which uses a series of pound signs and numbers to indicate your different assignments. You gotta do what works for you, obviously, but you should do something, because to differentiate, to allow your students to see that in my instructional design, this is kind of how things work, and then I just repeat it mostly for what I do, but if it's something that can be repeated, then students know exactly where to find things and how to go into your class and where to go. To create a topic, there is a resource for this, but you can go up to create up here, you can go to topic, and that's where you can add in your topics. Like I said, there are resources with videos on the slides that I skipped here that you can look at. Now let's move on to access and accessibility. Big thing with this is students gaining access to learning materials that you have on them. If you're going to use Google Classroom as a way to bring in just-in-time learning, bring in opportunities that maybe extend beyond the classroom walls, you've got to find a way to give them the best possible access so they can do that. So, one way to do that is the Chrome extension or the Google Classroom Share icon. I'm going to show you what these look like. But an extension is available if you're on Chrome. It makes sharing bearable and nothing is comparable. So you can see that if you want to, I'll show you that in a second. Another access piece is the guardians and parents. So keeping your parents in the know is probably not a bad idea. And guardians or parents are able to get a summary of what their student is doing in the classroom. One thing about this, what I've learned in putting this together, I don't have admin rights, so I can't actually turn that on. But I have a video showing you how you can turn it on and where to go to get that information. You may already be using this. I'm not sure if that's been successful for you or not. I remember having this feature on Canvas. Some parents really like that, and they'll let you know if there's something missing or if they have questions. Others never mentioned it once. Regardless though, I think it's not a bad idea to have students in the know, or students and the parents in the know as far as what you're doing in the classroom. So this is an excellent way to keep your guardians informed, is to invite them on the way to your learning buffet. And lastly, screenshots, or screencasts. So this is more accessibility, but maybe you're sharing directions 100 times a day. Isn't there an easier way to say what you want to say? And screencasts are what I use a ton, taking that Google Classroom usage beyond the basics, because you're thinking about it in terms of, I can put together a screencast in 5 minutes or less. It can be shared and sent to my Google Drive. I can upload it on an assignment. That can be a part of the assignment as well as the written text. All of that can be shared with a student. And so really, a student, if they don't watch the video, obviously they won't know what's going on. But they could read the instructions and maybe figure it out. But if they have a video as well telling them exactly how to do things, I think that eliminates a lot of this repeated instructions, gives students an accessibility piece where, if they move ahead in the chapter and they know that online, under this topic, under what we're doing in class, oh, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so already has the instructions there. I can get started if I want. And then, you can spend more time working with students that need more assistance. You can really structure your classroom a little differently if you have this in Intel. So sharing what this looks like, first things first, the share to classroom. Now obviously news travels quickly. We have a lot of news, a lot of topics that maybe you don't want to bring into the classroom, but some things maybe you do want to use as a teachable moment. The Carson King, all that, just talked about this at the Digital Literacy Conference. That was timely, that was a teachable moment. I'm not sure if you taught that in the classroom necessarily, but the ability to bring that in multiple perspectives via like Google Classroom, the shared classroom extension, is readily available and possible, and it makes it really easy to bring in those teachable moments. You structure the conversation, you model what you want out of students, and so you can get ahead of that and still use it as a learning experience, obviously, because it's part of their lives just as much as ours. So say something like, we'll take this news, for example. The shared classroom feature, again, this is on the slides. If you haven't used this ever, their instructions are there for you to add this. But basically what it does is it takes whatever content is here on the web page, creates an opportunity to share it with that class. I can just push the material, I can create assignments, I can ask questions, I can make an announcement. If your students are accustomed to learning with current events, this is a great way to structure it as, this is a question. I think if you're having a debate about something, I would do a little more modeling, of course, and have some supports there for students if they're participating in online discussion. But nonetheless, you could ask a question of students, share the instructions, put it into a grading category. We'll talk about grading categories in a second. It already recognizes the points that I use, add a due date, put it in a topic, and send it away. So the ability, obviously you probably want to read the article, but reading the article, figuring out what it says, pushing this to students, very possible, very easy to do, and a great way to enhance your Google Classroom beyond the basics. Also with this, do you want different perspectives? We're going to talk about differentiating in a little bit. Maybe you give this article you push this to half of your students, while you push a different article to other students, and then you have a conversation in the classroom. It could work in a lot of different ways. And how to push that to just certain students is up here. I'll talk about this more in a second. But if I just want training managers to have this instead of Tyler, you can just push it to him. So he and others in the class are having a conversation about this. Okay, they have one perspective. Now the others have a different perspective. Now we're going to go through our Socratic seminar. We're going to have a discussion about this. And you've just facilitated most of that online, and then created a dynamic learning experience face-to-face. And that really works well with a lot of things. So if you wanted to just share an image, for example, maybe it's a hook for the beginning of the class or beginning of a unit. This is your anticipatory set, getting students engaged in the content that you're teaching. You can share that. Maybe you want to share them just a short snippet of a video. You know, you can share that. If you want to share an audio clip, podcast, you know, it works for all. Another thing you can share is using the Google Classroom share icon. And so what this looks like, and I do share on the slides, all the resource slides, I do share like PBS Learning Media has this, CK12 has this, Newsella has this, a lot of sites have this. But what it does, very similar to Shared Classroom, but because it's embedded into the website, so Iowa AEA Online Resources, go to Gale, say we're talking about autonomous vehicles in the classroom, or maybe this is a start of a research project for students. They've all identified what topics they want. You have a list of that, or you have groups figured out for that. Now you can maybe start the conversation with high quality, credible, vetted materials, where you send this to students and say, all right, this is a great article on self-driving cars. I go up to the Google Share icon. Works similarly to the Shared Classroom extension. It's a different account. You can create an assignment off of this. Again, maybe there's a small group that's doing driverless cars. I just send it to those students. I would have a list here. I just pick those students, send them this article, say, start with this as a research base, then we'll build off of this. Then you'll do research off of this. Here is also where you can add in the originality reports. I did sign up for the beta for this, so you know, if you were doing a research paper and that was part of the assignment, maybe you do click that on for this and try that. That's not something I can use with students. I don't think I will use with adult learners, but you know, doing position papers in the past, 5-paragraph essays, you know, all that in high school, I definitely would have used that feature. Another thing, you know, sharing instructions. So, like I said, you know, you can share something 100 times, or you could use a screencast, which there are so many great screencast options. You'll see it on the resource slide. Loom is one, Screencast-O-Matic, Screencastify. All these are great, great resources. I pay for Screencastify. With that pro version, I can have extended screencasts, so I can have 15 minutes, you know, whatever. Not that I would advise that, but you know, you can definitely go that length if you wish. Nice thing with Screencastify as well. Very easy to use, very easy to capture my screen. I can also turn some of my screencasts into GIFs. So that's what I showed you with the What's New in 2019. That was a GIF that I created from Screencastify. And then I have an option to see all of my recordings here, but I also can go back I can also, when I screencast something, real quick, here are the instructions for how to do this, okay? You'll notice here, it automatically uploads to Google Drive, and then you can put it on YouTube if you wish. YouTube may be blocked at your school, so that's probably not the best option, especially if your screencasts are going to go there. But the ability to put them into Drive, save space, it's in Drive format, pretty easy to view then, and it's as simple as then going to, you know, something like this. I have all the instructions here. Again, explicit, online class, never see these people. So I do have to be very explicit. I share the process, you know, what have you. And then I have 2 quick videos showing them exactly how to do things, how we're framing the discussion. And that's how I start every single module, and that's how I do every single learning opportunity for my online classes as a way to provide that instruction, not have to repeat myself 100 times, and the ability, to share that with my students. Some students love that. I don't know if they want to listen to you on repeat, but they certainly could. Putting that content on here is very easy, like I said. It's simply just finding something from your recents. So these are videos that I just recently created. Add them to the list. They're accessible to your students. Lastly, in the last 20 minutes or so, we'll have things that you can look at, but also maybe you have time for some questions. And there's lots of ideas to explore on the last few slides. So, differentiation, you can assign works to individuals or small groups. It doesn't matter as long as they have the link to their platform. Now really, seriously, you can create learning experiences for small groups of students by just assigning them to those groups of students. And there is a link on how to do that on the resource slide. You could create entire courses just for specific groups of students. I don't know that I would advise that necessarily. It's a lot to manage, but that's possible if you do want to do that. Because I'm teaching online on Google Classroom, on a class on Google Classroom, you can teach via your personal accounts. As long as the teachers you're working with, the book club you're working with, church group, what have you. I've had several people say, I'm going to use this for my youth group. I'm going to use this for my book club. I'm going to use this for scouts, whatever. You can do that. You can create a class tomorrow on basketball. You could share it with others. They can join you via their personal email, and you have a learning experience for students. Now, of course, if students are being a part of your learning experience on Google Classroom, I would not teach them via your personal email address and their personal accounts. Do not do that. Always stay in your domain, especially with students, to avoid any COPA or FERPA. But you could certainly, maybe you want to teach parents on a class on digital literacy, digital citizenship. We're having some requests for that. Parents want to have that information. They want to know what's going on social media. They want resources on that. You can create a class for them and provide that too. So that's one idea, differentiating. There's a lot of great resources that are shared on the slides. Eric Kurtz, this is one I reference in my class, differentiation with Google Classroom, 3 times the differentiation. It's a great resource. And there's some others on that in the notes there. A spooky good idea. So formative assessment, what's that you say? Is that something new or something we do all day? This is probably something you do both offline and online. The nice thing about using Google Classroom for formative assessment, say you use something like Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle, you can watch a video, add in some questions, figure out where students are at as far as what they're learning in the course. It ties nicely back to Google Classroom. You get all the results. It's seamless. Students can access it on Google Classroom, go to the Edpuzzle, come back. You have all the reports. That's a great way to figure out where students are at in their learning process. Or you can add in Google Forms very easily. You want to do a five question quick form that self-grades itself, so students can figure out where they're at, you can figure out where they're at, and all your students are at. You can do that via Google Classroom. Other formative assessments might depend on what you teach, of course, but there are examples of a lot of different ways that you can add in some ideas, and this resource has some great ideas for you. Scary good idea. Sometimes your students learn more than in the book. You can create an individual plan to be that book. So you can create an entirely individual learning plan, and this could go beyond just what you're teaching as far as content goes. Maybe students need some help on some of the soft skills. Maybe they need help with organization. Maybe they need some goals on, maybe they just need someone to advocate for them and help them along the way to, you fill in the blank, help them do something. You are their teacher, you teach them things. Maybe it goes beyond that, it's social emotional, maybe there's something there that students could benefit from. Alice Keeler just recently tweeted about this. You can create a topic for one student, they only see the topic, and you can lead them through a learning plan for whatever. I think for this, if you look at the tweet, she talks about setting up a goal. The sky's the limit there, really. Now, obviously, it's a lot to manage, of course, but thinking about it in terms of providing learning opportunities for students that, and it's not always just the students that need extended learning opportunities. Maybe it is truly a student that just needs help with organization tips, workflow tips, distractions, what have you. There are a lot of cool websites, resources, things out there that you can use. Basically put that student on an individual learning plan. You don't have to tell anyone about it. They see it in their to-do list as it comes up. And you can check in on them every single Sunday. So this is a check-in, check-in, check-in. It's a great way to connect with the students. But wait, don't cry. There is more things that you can do. So other ideas. You can dig deeper and beyond the basics with a grading tool. I'm going to share this real quick to show you what that looks like. The big thing about this is the canned responses. Obviously you want to give authentic feedback, but some things you can, if you give feedback over and over and over on, you can have canned responses that you can use to help with that feedback process. You can make copies of your courses. So teaching online courses and teaching the same one over and over and over again. I do make a copy of it. That way the structure's there, all the assignments are in order, the instructional design is in place. Previously you could not do that. So, copying a course is great, but of course you have to go in and make sure that your due dates are matched up, you have to redo all of those. And you also have to redo, if you have an assignment that you're making a copy for every single student, you have to go in and redo that assignment. Something with the sharing permissions does not allow you to reuse that type of assignment. So basically I have to recreate that one. That's unfortunate, but that's one assignment versus all of them. And in the past you might have used something like a reuse a post type of thing, so you can reuse an assignment. That's still an option for you. That's nice, especially for formative assessments, things that you are doing over and over. This is your bell ringer, this is your exit ticket. If you're doing that type of thing, you can reuse those. But making a copy of the course is awesome, because then you can create an entire shell. And if you're working on revamping your course, create that shell that is your practice or your sandbox course, make the changes, and then when you're ready to publish it, either publish that sandbox or copy and paste it over to create your new course, your most updated course. Other things you can do, schedule assignments. I think this one is pretty basic, but scheduling assignments to come out at certain times obviously is a great way to utilize something like Google Classroom. I don't have a resource with that one, unfortunately, but you can do that. Maybe show you if you have time. You can download the Classroom app, so either iOS or Android, and you can have your students download it too. This is great. So you can check in on your classes on the go. I'm able to do that when I'm away in the summer and I still want to check in with my classes. Students can also submit assignments via their mobile devices. So maybe they took a video of a nature walk or something that they were asked to do outside of class. They can easily submit that video as they're doing. And they could even take the video on Snapchat, annotate it, add the funny stuff, and they could submit that as a video. They could do that as a more fun, that's a more fun learning experience, but it's an option. Also, for you can annotate assignments on the mobile app. So if you have a mobile app on your device or tablet, you can then go in and annotate paper submissions or image submissions, what have you. Whatever your students are submitting, annotating those it's a great way to personalize the feedback for the students and a great way for you to organize, basically swipe through a bunch of assignments that have been submitted and annotate. Or you can take my online course. That's all I'll say about that. It is 2 licensure renewal credits. Basically, a lot of what we said here, plus additional action plans, discussions, etc. There's a lot of great ideas out there. So I'm going to share with you real quick what this looks like on the grading side of things. So this is a beyond the basics type of thing. Going in and viewing an assignment. Yeah, my students that have submitted things, I don't have any students right now that have a course going right now. But the ability to swipe through submissions, swipe through submissions and give feedback is really easy. So, you know, I could find something on here and comment on the document, great. You can still do that, and I could direct the comments to the student and assign it to them. They will get an email, they'll receive that comment from me. Or I can go to my comment bank and say, share some comments, whatever. You use one of these. Could add the comment here, or I could add the comment as a comment on their actual submission here. I can add the grade here. Great. Can return it. Return to the student. Moves on to the next one. The grading tool is much improved, easier to use. And now with the rubrics feature, I know it's in beta, so if you find the rubrics, if you find that resource and that link on my slides, you can go in there and check it out. Maybe they'll set you up with rubrics. I've not used it yet. I just got notification that I was accepted, so I can start trying it out. My next course. But you can easily swipe through all the assignments, return them all, return multiple submissions, and good to go. Now I'll take something like, I did mention I was going to talk to you about the scheduled assignment. So, you know, you take something like a forum. So currently, if you have been on Google Classroom recently, you probably noticed the grade categories. So you can create grade categories. I don't touch on that a lot in the slides here, but I basically have two things that I use online. You might have several things that you grade on in the classroom, but I can say that this is an activity. It knows that all activities are worth 15 points in the grade categories. I can put a due date, add a topic, and I can assign it right away, or I can schedule it. So it's already saved as a draft, so maybe I can go away from it, come back. But I can also schedule it here. I want this to open up tomorrow morning at 7:55. Schedule it. It'll be scheduled for your students. That is a nice feature, especially when you open modules weekly. I do try to keep it self-paced, but you know, it just kind of depends on what we're doing in class. But if you really heavily rely on the scheduled assignments and something happens in the classroom, schedules change, of course, then you have to remember that you scheduled your assignments. Because I've had someone real close to me who teaches math, who's used Google Classroom, scheduled their assignments all on the wrong day. Never showed up. Obviously, it's not a terrible fix, but you know, that definitely. So my question to you as we kind of wrap up here, we have about 7 minutes or so to explore, ask questions. What do you plan to start exploring first? A lot of ideas, of course. Some of you are way far advanced. Maybe a lot of this was review. Others, hopefully you found some great things to look at. I don't even know if any of you are still connected, but we can definitely see.
Is there any way we can view like our classroom from a student point of view? Because that's the issue I have. Like I want to show them how to do something, So I have to steal one of their computers and plug it into my system. And like, this is how you do it. And
Make
then
it-
undo all my stuff. And
Make a fake student.
Yeah, unless you're a district and make a fake student.
uh,
Like my organization has, 4 or 5 fake accounts. So use those as test accounts. Luckily, on the personal side of things, that training youngers, I created an entire training account. So that's my student, my test student. Yeah, unfortunately, no. Not yet. Maybe eventually.
I had teachers I collaborate with. Like, I'm putting you in as a student, and then go in and look it up for me. I want to see what it looks like. But
Oh, so did that
it
work?
works, but I'm just like it. Just only there's a button. We can just pick a
Yeah,
student view.
yeah. Yeah, if you're familiar with Canvas or any of those other learning management systems, of course you can do a student view. So I wonder if that's a feature that's going to come out. I'm not sure. It'd be nice. Any other questions? You can end 5 minutes early if you wish. This is my contact information. I'm on Twitter. Don't tweet too much. Tweet during conferences and stuff. My email address is there. If you're from Northwest Iowa, I can actually see you face to face. But if you ever have questions about something, I'm not like a Google Classroom super expert or anything like that. I use it. I find it really awesome, an awesome tool. I try to use it as much as I can, stay updated on it, so I can share resources as they come across to me. I can show you. Thanks. Have a great day.